What would it look like if Pokemon did a crossover with Monster Hunter? Well, let's find out. Hey everybody, Brandon here. So many of you may not know this, but I am actually a massive Monster Hunter fan. I have been a fan since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate on the Wii U. Yeah, the Wii U. Yeah, that thing. That definitely happened. So imagine my excitement when my good friend BromoJumbo over on Instagram started doing a crossover between Monster Hunter and Pokemon. With the DLC for the current Monster Hunter game, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, releasing recently, I thought it'd be a fun time to celebrate by taking a look at this incredible crossover. Usually this subject matter would be kind of more saved for shorts, usually that kind of crossover content is saved for there. But I love Pokemon and Monster Hunter so much that I just kind of wanted to gush about two series that I love with my whole heart. So forgive me for wanting to just talk about them. Anyway, let's jump into our first entry into this crossover, which is Grimsterol plus the Gossharag. Or the Gossharag, however you pronounce it. I'd pronounce it Gossharag because it kind of flows well. Anyway, Grimsterol and the Gossharag work so well together, and I really didn't think about it until I saw it, because honestly in my head, whenever I thought of a Pokemon Monster Hunter crossover, I always imagined like Ursaring or like Beartic mixing with the Gossharag, because the Gossharag kind of has that same body shape as the Arzuros, so I figured like a more of a bear type Pokemon Monster Hunter crossover would be the thing. But honestly, looking at it now, Grimsterol is kind of an Oni and Gossharag's an Oni, so it really makes sense and works. And they both have hair as a focal point of their design. I mean, Gossharag kind of looks like it has like a pelt rather than a fur. But like I said before, it kind of had that kind of bear aesthetic to it. And Grimsterol has hair as like the focal point of its design. And the way that he incorporated them into each other works perfectly. And I mean the teeth, like particularly like Grimsterol has pretty iconic teeth, and so does the Gossharag, so these two just were like a match made in heaven. Also, low-key, I love the Ice Dark type. I don't know why. I know it's quad weak to fighting, but like Ice Dark is just such a cool type combo, like the frosty elements mixed with like the evil element. I don't know, something about it just appeals to me. Speaking of a match made in heaven, we have Sharpedo plus Zamtrios. If there was ever going to be two, a Pokemon and a Monster Hunter monster combined, this was the crossover. Sharpedo, shark. Zamtrios, shark that can be on land. Loki, the Zamtrios used to be one of my favorite monsters to hunt in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and I just love the land shark kind of vibe it has to it. Also, like its whole ice aesthetic mixing in with that, like it's just so cool. No pun intended. Actually, you know what? Full pun intended. I'm not a coward. I intend my puns. But also Sharpedo mixing with the Zamtrios is great for me because it gives us that full shark. I've always wanted like a full-on shark Pokemon, not the cut-off torpedo shark Pokemon, but like an actually full-bodied shark Pokemon. So this gives me that. Plus also it has like 4 legs now, so I mean, I guess that's a plus. It also has another ice armor form, which the Zamtrios does, brings in that ice armor element, which, in and of itself, the Zamtrios' ice armor design looks like this, but when you mix in the idea of Mega Sharpedo, who has like the sawtooth nose, it just, chef's kiss. Just absolutely chef's kiss. Next up, we have Woobat plus the Paolumu, and oh my god, the cuteness factor is insane. My goodness. The Paolumu was already cute as it is. It's like one of the cutest monsters in Monster Hunter, in my opinion. And then you mix in like the goofiness of Woobat with the goofy eyes and then the heart nose, and it's just so iconic. I just love round little guys like Togedemaru or Dedenne or even Woobat. Actually, wait, hold on, wait. Actually, the shape of this, like the ball with the wings looks exactly like Woobat himself, like itself. That's crazy, actually. So that we have the Woobat plus Paolumu, but actually Woobat mixed in there as well. So this just works tenfold. Hey, future Brandon here. So as it turns out, I accidentally skipped over one of the monsters, and it's like one of the most iconic ones. So here we have Tyrantrum plus the Devil Joe, or the Devil Joe. Some people say Devil Joe, some people said Devil Ho, which doesn't sound nice. But anyway, this is Tyrantrum plus the Devil Joe, and it is so incredible. I absolutely adore this design. It mixes in the terrifyingness of the Deviljho in with the intimidation of Tyrantrum. The hardened spikiness of Tyrantrum combines effortlessly with the almost serrated teeth-like spikes that the Deviljho has. The Deviljho is one of the most terrifying monsters to fight in all of Monster Hunter, yet he managed to mix in Tyrantrum in there and still make it feel intimidating but friendly like a Pokemon should. Also, the Dragon Dark type for the Deviljho is just perfect considering it has devil in its name as well as it is like so scary. Next up, we have Brawler mixed with the Shen Gowron. And I'll be completely honest, I'm not as familiar with the Shen Gowron as I am with other monsters because this one came out in Monster Hunter 2, and as I said before, I started in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. But I have seen the Shen Gowron before, and it is actually really crazy looking. It looks like a daddy long legs crab thing, and honestly Brawler mixes really well with it because like the Shen Gowron already has those kind of like boxing glove looking claws that it has, and it also like shoots out the acid, which is why this thing has the fighting poison type. It shoots out this like yellow acidy ball thing, and it's really cool, and I think these two concepts just really mixed well together. Like I said, I'm not as familiar, so I'm not gonna have as much to say about this one, but still a very cool design. Next up, we have Ludicolo plus Tetranodon, and honest to God, like when I saw the Tetranodon, the first thing I thought of was Ludicolo, so this combo just works so well, and I really like the way that they incorporated the more mossy elements of the Tetranodon into Ludicolo's design. You still have that, you know, iconic sombrero that it has, but it has that like port belly of the Tetranodon. And it kind of mixes well because Ludicolo already has that kind of like pineapple shape to it. And so they just expand that pineapple shape into more of that big gut that the Tetranodon has. Honestly, I could see this thing just being a regional variant of Ludicolo in the future. Like maybe some kind of like stealth Ludicolo that needs to use like the moss on its back for stealth for some kind of reason, like kind of ghillie suit kind of vibes going on there. It's grass ground type, which I feel works really well considering it's, you know, kind of like grassy, you know, foliage on its body, as well as it uses the, you know, kind of ground based attacks like spitting gravel and stuff at you. And you can even see that in its little chin thing right here. These are little pebbles, and then you know, the sombrero also references that. Next up, we have Alolan Exeggutor plus the Kazoo. If anybody's played Monster Hunter, they know the Kazoo is not fun. Not a fun monster to fight. It's creepy, creeps me out. I don't like it, but I like how the combo works here. Electric Dragon type, which is really fun. It's just veiny and gross and pale, and like it hardly has eyes. It's just not a fun time to fight this thing. As far as the combo goes, I think it works well. It's kind of a little bit of a stretch. It's not as much as like Ludicolo x Tetranodon, where it kind of works pretty naturally. This one is kind of a little bit like really had to force in the Kazoo elements into the Alolan Exeggutor design, because, you know, you're going from a tree to like a nightmare dragon. But I do think it's a clever incorporation in the fact that Exeggutor does have that face on its tail, so it kind of makes sense for, you know, the double-ended Kazoo. I don't like the way I said that, double-ended. That's not a good term. Don't like that. But you get what I'm saying, that aspect of the design works well together, but still creeps me the hell out, just like the Kazoo. Next up, we've got Lycanrock x Zynogur, and Zynogur, it's just like one of the coolest monsters in all of Monster Hunter. It's just so epic, like a lightning wolf, like, it's just so epic. And I really like how he made it electric rock type. You really incorporated in those elements of Lycanrock into the Zynogur, rather than just making it outright electric type and just, you know, abolishing, you know, just putting Zynogur onto Lycanrock rather than like combining them. BromoJumbo really did a good job of combining these two creatures. And it works really well because Zynogur really has those like hardened, almost rock-like scales on it. It almost kind of looks draconic in nature. I mean, it is a monster from Monster Hunter. A lot of them are dragons. But yeah, that kind of hardened nature of Zynogur mixes well into kind of a more rock type like Lycanrock. And I would love to see the midnight form of Lycanrock mixed in with the Zynogur as well, just kind of seeing it bipedally. But I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be the dusk form because it has that, like, you know, that same kind of floof that the the midnight form does. But I would think it would be really fun to see this thing stand up on 2 legs and just see how vicious it could be. Because the Zynogar, I'm pretty sure in some of its attack patterns do get it on 2 legs. I might be misremembering, but I think it doesn't like become bipedal, but it stands up on its hind legs. So does that count? Next up, we've got Garchomp X Brachydios. The Brachydios has some of the most like iconic weaponry in Monster Hunter. Like I always would grind up the Brachydios to get that explosive weaponry, and I love it so much. And it mixes so well into the Garchomp concept, because instead of these like kind of like blade-esque hands, it now has these like fists. They almost look like Nerf bullets. But it's Dragon Poison type, which works well considering that, you know, it has that kind of infectious little explosive goo that it gets on you and then you explode and it's not a good time. I really like how he incorporated the Brachydios in with the Garchomp, with kind of having Garchomp's more like hammerhead side fin things matching up with the Brachydios's, you know, bulbous horn. Like it's almost like a fist. It's like he has these 2 fists and then he has like a 3rd fist on his head. It's very like Chuck Norris, if you get what I'm saying. Chuck Norris jokes, everybody, in 2022. Man, am I dating myself. Next up, we got Tentacruel plus the Nakarkos, and I love this. It mixes in the kind of Kraken elements of the Nakarkos, because the Nakarkos is quote-unquote an elder dragon, but it's not really a dragon, it's more of a Kraken, and, you know, Tentacruel has that same kind of, you know, Kraken energy, even though it's a jellyfish. So it's really interesting that these things are both things, like different things than they're supposed to be. Like Tentacruel is a jellyfish, but it's kind of more of a octopus, and then the Nakarkos is an elder dragon. It's supposed to be a dragon, but it's more of a Kraken. Anyway, I love how he combined these two, because for me, Tentacruel has these like ruby red bulbs on its head that almost look like a second set of eyes. You know, when it's floating in the water, they kind of look like these intimidating red eyes. And I think Bromo relates to that because he made them blue instead of red and made them the eyes of the skull. And the skull in and of itself is a Charizard skull. And also these like little skulls on its like side tentacles look like Cubone skulls with like little horns on them, or maybe even like Aerodactyl skulls. All around, I feel like it's a very solid combination, and the dark ground type works extremely well for the Nakarkos. Next up, we have Toxicroak plus Drill Tusk Tetsukabra. Wow, that's hard to say. I had to take like 3 or 4 takes to get that right. But we have the Drill Tusk Tetsukabra. My goodness. But honestly, this is one of my favorite designs of the entire crossover, just because of how it changes Toxicroak. It gives it this like bullfrog aesthetic, and it just like has this intimidating demeanor to it. I love that. And the color choice gives me like superhero or even super villain vibes. This is another one of those designs I could definitely see being like a regional variant maybe in the future. I don't like, obviously they're not going to mix these two in the future for real, but maybe I could eat my words. Who knows? I would be really happy if they crossed over eventually. But anyway, as I was saying, yes, I think mixing in kind of a bullfrog into Toxicroak's design, I think would be so cool. And obviously this is a good example of that. Next up, we've got Obstagoon plus Apex Arzuros, and this design is just epic. It's very grungy and battle hardened and adds that to Obstagoon, which I really like. But one thing I have to say that I kind of disagree with is the choice of Obstagoon. Personally, I would have gone with Pangoro, because Arzuros is a bear and Pangoro is like Apex Arzuros is kind of like got that black and white, and so does Pangoro, and Pangoro is a panda bear. That's just me, but the design itself works really well, but I would have loved to have seen Pangoro rather than Obstagoon. Next up, we've got Primape plus the Blanganga, and oh my gosh, I just love this so much. It's just so goofy. Like the Blanganga itself is really goofy, and Primape itself is kind of has that goofiness to it, and I love how they moved like the anger mark from its like the side of its head to this big bulbous part of its head. This is just so goofy in all the right ways, and I love that about it. I would really love to see a like fighting fire type version of this that's mixed with the flame Blanganga, because that design is also really epic and varies a lot from the original Blanganga. One thing I will comment on is I just love its giant rubbery looking fist. It's giving me Luffy energy, which I adore. Next up, we have Crocodile plus the Agnactor, and this is another one of those designs where it's like, I wouldn't have thought of it, and now that I see it though, it just makes perfect sense. Like, Bromo really managed to play into the proportions of Crocodile and managed to fit them in with the Agnactor design, which is just commendable. Like, you can still very much get Crocodile from this, but it like wholly is an Agnactor. Like, it wholly looks like just like if Agnactor would be in the Pokemon universe rather than it being a fusion. On top of that, being able to meld their types so well, fire, ground type, I mean, you know, we have the dark ground type of Crocodile, but also that fire and ground kind of coming from the magma of the Agnactor. You know, it kind of swims in lava. So the type combo mixes well as well. It really is just a top tier design. Next up, we have Zebstrika plus the Kirin, and these two were they're just meant for each other. Literally, these two designs were meant to be fused. It was, you know, it was told in the legends of yore that these two would be fused one day. And it just looks so good. It just looks so good, like incorporating the kind of lightning zebra elements onto the Kirin design, which was already a really cool design. Kirin's one of my favorite Monster Hunter monsters just because of how unique it is from any other monster. But you get that kind of fluffy, electrified fur from the Kirin and mix it into the more like lightning bolt zebra pattern of Zebstrika, and it's just a match made in heaven. I said it already, and I'll say it again. It's just, they're perfect together. Next up, we have Komodo plus the Basil Goose, or Basil Juice, Beetlejuice. This is another one that I wouldn't have thought of, but makes so much sense in hindsight. Like, obviously mixing the scales of Komodo, the clanging scales of Komodo with the explosive scales of the Basil Goose is just like, it makes perfect sense. People are probably gonna make fun of me for calling it the Basil Goose, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. Like, Basil Goose. I don't know. And I love how we added these wings to Komodo because, you know, obviously the Basil Goose has them, but it also makes it into more of a traditional dragon because Komodo only is like more lizard than actual dragon. It doesn't have any of the wings or other kind of things that dragons typically do. Next up, we've got Copperraja plus the Gammoth, and it's just natural. I mean, elephant monster, elephant Pokemon, put them together. It works out beautifully. But one detail that I absolutely love that Bromo did is that little crest that Gammoth has on its head has been turned into a Pokeball. So incredibly clever, and I love that. Good on you, Bromo, because that's so clever and just a little detail that makes this design that much better. Next up, we've got Charizard x Rathalos, and it's about time. I mean, we've got Charizard, like the de facto dragon of the Pokemon universe, and Rathalos, the de facto dragon of the Monster Hunter universe. Put them together and you make magic. This design is so magnificent. It is epic. It is tough. It is so cool. Actually, it's the opposite of cool. It's actually quite hot because it's a fire type. And speaking of the fire type, it has the flames in the wings. So epic. Oh my gosh. And the scales of the Rathalos put on to Charizard, just, you know, amplifying that draconic nature of Charizard, and it all comes together so fantastically. Another detail that I really love is he kept the flame tail, but also kept the Rathalos's tail on top of that, so it looks like a little almost like bomb on fire that it could like whack you with and just like explode or something. I don't know. This is just my headcanon here. This design amplifies everything I could have hoped for in a Monster Hunter and Pokemon crossover. Last but certainly not least is Leewani plus the Atelka, and this thing is just another design that merges so well together. But there's another part of this that's really epic. But first, I'll comment on this design, but there's more to see to this design than just this. First off, I love the way this design incorporates the Atelka into Leewani. Like I said, they merge really, really well together. But you kind of have that Pharaoh Egyptian aesthetic mixing in there, the kind of like scarab kind of aesthetic mixing in there from the Atelka into Leewani. And it's bug psychic type, which also works into that kind of idea. But next, I just want to show this off. I'm so excited about it. It has the steel beam from Girder, but it incorporates the Atelka has that like big chunk of stuff it'll have in one phase. Like it'll have that big giant beam that it'll hold on to. But instead, they made it into Girder's beam that it holds, and now it's a bug steel type. But then for the final stage, it gets even wackier because the Atelka gets really wackier. This is so great. I love it. For those unfamiliar, the Atelka literally makes a giant dragon mech that it strings together with its webbing. And so in doing that, Leewani has made a Giratina, and it's just, I'm done. I'm just done with this. It's just so great. This honestly hits all the right buttons for me. I mean, it's funny, it's epic, it incorporates the design elements from the Pokemon and the monster in a fun and unique and interesting way. And bottom line, it just makes me smile, and when a design can evoke that feeling out of you, that's always a good thing. And that's it for the designs for the Pokemon X Monster Hunter crossover by BromoJumbo. Please go show Bromo your support. They are an amazing artist with an amazing eye for design, and I love their work. Every single time they do any kind of Pokemon related content, they always knock it out of the park. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to help support this channel and keep up to date with future videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and with that, I will see you guys next time.